Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I started go-karting when I was 12 years old. My dad used to take me every weekend to this little track across town, and I fell in love with the sport instantly. Over the years, I got pretty good at it, not professional level or anything, but I could hold my own against most casual racers. My younger brother caught the bug too, and now it's become our family tradition to hit the track together whenever we get the chance. That's what we were doing last Saturday. It was one of those perfect spring days where the sun is out but it's not too hot yet. My brother had been begging us to go karting for weeks, and since we all had the day free, we decided to make it happen. The local track was pretty busy when we arrived. Families everywhere, kids running around excited, the usual weekend crowd. We paid for our sessions and got our helmets. I was pumped. There's something about the smell of rubber and fuel that just gets my blood going. We joined the line for the next race, and that's when I first noticed them. This woman and her kid, maybe around 10 years old. The kid seemed normal enough, but something about the way his mom was talking to the staff rubbed me the wrong way. She kept complaining about the wait time and demanding they start the next race immediately. When our turn came up, I climbed into my cart and did my usual pre-race checks. The track was a good mix of straightaways and tight corners, perfect for some competitive racing. I wasn't planning to go easy just because there were families around. That's not how karting works. You race to win, but you race clean. The flag dropped and we were off. I got a decent start and settled into third place behind two other guys who clearly knew what they were doing. The kid from earlier was a few spots behind me, struggling with the turns. His mom was watching from the fence, shouting instructions that he probably couldn't even hear over the engine noise. About halfway through the race, I saw my chance to make a move. One of the leaders went wide on a corner, and I shot up the inside. Standard racing move, we made contact, just a little bump, but that's karting. The other driver gave me a thumbs up when I passed. Good, clean racing. I ended up winning that heat, which felt great. I was pulling off my helmet when this woman came walking over to me. She yelled at me, asking if I was in the recent race. I told her yes and asked what was wrong. She screamed about how I dared to bump her child and make him lose. I was confused because bumping happens in every single kart race. It's part of the sport. I tried to explain that bumping was allowed in karting. She just said, okay, with this weird smile that made me uncomfortable, but I figured that was it. The next race lined up, and wouldn't you know it, she was racing too this time. I should have seen what was coming. When we got out on track, she started driving like a maniac. She was right behind me, ramming into my rear bumper way harder than necessary. Then she tried to squeeze me into the barrier on a turn. This wasn't racing anymore, this was dangerous. One of the track workers flagged her down after the race. He told her she needed to stop doing that or they would kick her out. She yelled back that I had done it to her son and said it was okay. The worker explained that while bumping was okay in karting, trying to flip someone over wasn't okay and could result in jail time or lawsuits for damages. She screamed that it was unfair. The worker walked away shaking his head. I could tell he'd dealt with people like her before. But one more race got called, and the kid was in it again. I felt bad for him honestly. His mom was making a scene and embarrassing him in front of everyone. But I wasn't going to throw the race just to make her happy. I drove my best and ended up taking first place again. The kid finished last mostly because he was still learning and the other racers were more experienced. I parked my cart and started walking back to my family when she intercepted me. She yelled that I let her son lose. I started to explain that it wasn't that easy, that it wasn't about placement, but about time, and that her son needed to drive faster to improve. Before I could finish explaining, she slapped me right across the face, hard enough that my cheeks started stinging immediately. I stood there in shock for a second, not believing what just happened. My mom saw the whole thing from the spectator area and came running over. She called Karen a witch, and Karen acted offended, asking how my mom dared to speak to her that way. My mom, who is normally the calmest person you'll ever meet, completely lost it. She grabbed Karen by the shoulders, and they started going at it right there on the track. I tried to step in and tell my mom I was okay, but she was in full protective mode. Karen started yelling for help, claiming this crazy woman was attacking her for no reason. My mom shouted back that Karen had hit her son and called her a psycho. A crowd started gathering. Kids were staring. Other parents were pulling out phones. It was a complete mess. The manager showed up pretty quickly. I guess fights at family entertainment venues get attention fast. He separated them and asked what was going on. Karen claimed that my mom had attacked her for no reason and that I had been bullying her child all day. I explained that she had slapped me because I won a race. When the manager asked Karen if that was true, she insisted I was cheating by bumping her son. The manager looked tired, like he'd been through this before. He said he would check the security cameras. We all waited while he went to the office. My cheek was still red and stinging. My mom kept apologizing for losing her temper, but honestly, I was proud of her for sticking up for me. When the manager came back, his expression said everything. He told Karen that the footage clearly showed she was the aggressor and had endangered other racers and assaulted me. She protested that I had made her son lose. The manager explained that karting involved competition and bumping was allowed, but her actions were unacceptable and she was banned from the facility. Karen started screaming that he couldn't do this and threatened to call corporate. The manager told her that was her right, but she needed to leave the property immediately. She started screaming about lawyers and discrimination and how unfair everything was. Her poor kid looked like he wanted to disappear. Finally, security escorted them out while she ranted the whole way. After they left, the manager pulled me aside. He apologized for what happened and said Karen's behavior was completely unacceptable. I told him it was okay and thanked him for handling it. He offered my family 15 free races the next time we came in as compensation. My brother's eyes lit up when he heard that. 15 free races was like hitting the jackpot for him. The rest of the day went smoothly. We did a few more races, grabbed some food, and had a great time. But I kept thinking about that woman and her kid. I wondered if she acted like that everywhere they went, and I felt sorry for him having to deal with that kind of embarrassment. My mom was still wound up about it. On the drive home, she said she couldn't believe Karen had hit me and wondered who does that kind of thing. I told her it was fine and that she didn't have to fight Karen. My mom insisted that yes, she did have to because nobody touches her kids. That's when it really hit me how lucky I am to have parents who have my back. This woman's kid is probably going to grow up thinking that kind of behavior is normal, or he's going to be constantly embarrassed by his mom's outbursts. My mom met him when she was young and naive. He used to be this promising baseball player with dreams of making it big. Everyone in his small Illinois town knew his name and expected great things. But somewhere along the way, those dreams got drowned in bottles of cheap liquor. When my mom got involved with him, he was already spiraling, though none of us knew how bad it would get. The beginning of the end started on a rainy evening in Joliet, Illinois. He had been drinking heavily that night like most nights, and decided he was fine to drive. The roads were slick and he was weaving all over the place when he saw those flashing lights in his rearview mirror. The officer walked up to his window and immediately knew what he was dealing with. The stern-faced cop ordered him to step out of the vehicle. He stumbled out reeking of alcohol. The officer ran him through all the standard sobriety tests, and he failed every single one. Within minutes, he was in handcuffs, being loaded into the back of the police cruiser. You'd think 2 months in county jail would teach someone a lesson, right? Wrong. Instead of reflecting on his mistakes, he spent that entire time obsessing over the officer who arrested him. He somehow found out where the officer lived and started planning his revenge. The man who was supposed to be getting sober was instead getting more dangerous. When he got out, he didn't waste any time. He convinced one of his drinking buddies to help him with his twisted plan. They bought 2 gas cans, filled them up, and drove to the officer's house in the middle of the night. What they didn't know was that the officer's wife and kids were sleeping inside. They doused the outside of the house with gasoline, creating trails all around the property. Then he lit a match. The flames spread faster than they expected. The whole house went up like a matchbox. The officer's family barely made it out alive. They woke up to smoke and flames and had to run for their lives in their pajamas. Some neighbors saw him speeding away and called it in immediately. The fire department came, but the house was already a total loss. The family lost everything they owned, but at least they were alive. The police launched a massive manhunt. They had witness descriptions, surveillance footage, and plenty of evidence. It took them a few weeks, but they caught him trying to lie low at another friend's place. When they dragged him into court, you'd think he'd show some remorse, right? Nope. He actually tried to argue that the officer deserved it. He made up all these lies about police brutality and misconduct, trying to paint himself as the victim. That's when his mother showed up to court. This woman was something else entirely. She told the judge that her son was a good boy and that the police officer had no right to arrest him. She claimed he was just defending himself by burning down that house. The judge tried to explain that her son had committed arson and attempted murder, but she wouldn't listen. The entitled mother kept insisting that the officer had ruined her son's life and deserved what he got. She actually said the judge should be thanking her son for standing up to corrupt cops. The judge was having none of it. After she kept interrupting and making outrageous statements, he banned her from the courtroom entirely. She actually had to be escorted out by security while screaming about how unfair everyone was being to her baby. The trial didn't last long after that. The evidence was overwhelming. 4 counts of attempted murder. The judge sentenced him to 20 years in Illinois State Prison. You'd think that would be the end of it. But my mom made the worst decision of her life. She believed he could change. That prison would fix him somehow. So when he got transferred to a facility in Colorado, she packed us up and followed him there. After he served his time, Colorado basically gave him a clean slate. His previous convictions didn't transfer over properly, so he got his license back and went right back to drinking and driving. Then he started cheating on my mom with multiple women. The real nightmare began when he started bringing his drunken rages home to us. I was just a kid, and my sister was only 3, but we had to deal with his violent outbursts whenever he'd been drinking, which was most nights. The breaking point came in 2012. We were living in this apartment complex with security doors, and he wanted to go out partying again. My mom had finally reached her limit. She told him he wasn't going anywhere because he was drunk and needed to stay home with his family. He got angry and said she couldn't tell him what to do, that he was going out whether she liked it or not. My mom warned him that if he left, he shouldn't bother coming back that night. When he tried to leave and found the door locked, he completely lost it. He started kicking and pounding on the door like a maniac. The whole building could hear him screaming and carrying on. He yelled that he would break down the door if she didn't open it right away. My mom told him to go sleep it off somewhere else, but he kept screaming that it was his apartment too and she couldn't keep him out. That's when he actually did it. He kicked the door so hard that the entire lock mechanism exploded inward. A big mirror on the wall shattered from the impact, and pieces of metal and glass went flying everywhere. I was standing right there and barely missed getting hit by the lock assembly. My mom called 911 immediately. When the police showed up, they arrested him on the spot. They took one look at the destroyed door, the broken mirror, and us kids cowering in the corner, and they knew exactly what had happened. The state put us in a program called Sprout House while he sat in county jail for a year. They gave my mom a restraining order, but that didn't stop him. When he got out, he started showing up places he wasn't supposed to be, trying to intimidate my mom into taking him back. He would tell her that she couldn't keep his kids from him forever. My mom would remind him that the restraining order said she could and that he needed to leave us alone. He would respond by saying that piece of paper didn't scare him. It should have. He got arrested again for violating the restraining order and got sentenced to 2 more years in Colorado State Prison. When he got out this time, he managed to stay out of trouble for a few months, but old habits die hard. He got drunk again, crashed his van, and earned himself another 2 years in county jail. By then, my mom had finally had enough. She met a decent man who actually treated her and us kids with respect. Someone who didn't come home drunk every night looking for a fight. The crazy part is that he eventually got his act together too. He met a woman who somehow managed to straighten him out, and they had kids of their own. He got sober, stopped the violent outbursts, and actually became a halfway decent father to his new family. I guess prison and losing everything finally taught him but my mom's love and patience never could. Back in June, an old friend from high school reached out to me on social media. We hadn't talked much since graduation, but she seemed friendly enough. Let's call her Karen. Karen messaged me saying she hoped I was doing well in the big city and had a huge favor to ask. When I responded asking what was up, she explained that she and her boyfriend were coming to New York for a wedding at the end of September or early October. She wondered if they could crash at my place for like 5 or 6 days and said it would be great to catch up. I hesitated for a moment. My apartment is barely big enough for me, let alone 2 additional people I'd never met. But Karen had been nice to me in high school, and I figured it was just a few days. I told her that should be fine and asked her to let me know the exact dates when she had them. She responded enthusiastically, calling me the best and promising to get back to me with details soon. That was in June. Months passed without another word from her. I honestly forgot about the whole thing until 2 weeks ago when I suddenly remembered. The timing couldn't have been worse. I had just found out that I needed to travel upstate to help my elderly grandmother move into assisted living. It was something that couldn't be postponed. I decided to reach out to Karen to get those exact dates she'd promised to send me. I messaged her saying I hoped she was doing well and asking for the specific dates for her New York trip because I needed to make some travel arrangements. It took her 3 days to respond. When she finally did, she told me there had been a change of plans. Her friend, who was supposed to put them up for half the trip, couldn't do it anymore because she lived with 3 roommates and they had this crazy aggressive dog. She also mentioned they were pretty broke right now and couldn't afford an expensive hotel or anything, so they would need to stay with me for the whole time. My stomach dropped. The whole time? That would be over a week of 2 strangers living in my tiny apartment. I asked her how long exactly we were talking about. She casually mentioned probably like 10 days, maybe 12, explaining that the wedding was on a Saturday but they wanted to do some sightseeing too. 12 days in my studio apartment with my cats who get stressed around new people when I needed to be out of town for several of those days. But here's where my people-pleasing nature kicked in. Instead of being honest about my concerns, I felt guilty. This was my friend, and she was in a tight spot financially. Maybe I could make it work somehow. I told her okay, but mentioned that I did need to travel for a few days during her visit for a family emergency. She brushed off my concerns, saying that was totally fine and they were easy guests, telling me not to worry about them. I should have consulted my boyfriend first, but I felt pressured to give her an answer. When I told him about the arrangement later, his face said it all. He asked how I could agree to let 2 people we'd never met stay in our apartment for almost 2 weeks when we wouldn't even be there. When I explained that I felt bad saying no because she was in a tough spot, he expressed serious concerns about our safety and belongings. He pointed out that we didn't know these people at all and asked what would happen if something got broken or stolen or if they threw a party. He was right and I knew it. I tried calling Karen multiple times over the next week to discuss boundaries and expectations, but she kept dodging my calls. Her responses to my texts were vague and dismissive. Finally, on Sunday, just 4 days before her arrival, she answered her phone. I told her we really needed to talk about the logistics of her stay. She seemed confused about what there was to discuss, claiming they would just sleep on my couch and stay out of my way. I explained it wasn't that simple, telling her my boyfriend wasn't comfortable with them staying when we weren't there, and honestly, neither was I. I mentioned we'd never met her partner, and my apartment was really small. She became defensive immediately, asking if I was seriously backing out on her now and reminding me she'd already booked her flights. She complained about how expensive last-minute accommodations were in New York. I tried to clarify that I wasn't backing out, but we needed to set some ground rules. She interrupted me angrily, saying she couldn't believe I was doing this to her and thought we were friends. Then she hung up on me. Now it's Wednesday night, and she's supposed to arrive tomorrow. The only thing she has told me since Sunday is that she managed to book 2 nights at some cheap place, but she's expecting to stay with me for the rest of her trip. I'm stressed, my boyfriend is angry, and my cats can sense the tension. I've been cleaning obsessively, trying to cat-proof everything in case she actually shows up. But part of me hopes she'll find other arrangements. Then Thursday evening came, and my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Karen standing there with a guy I'd never seen before, both of them loaded down with huge suitcases. She announced their arrival with fake enthusiasm, and I asked about her other accommodations for that night. She explained they had checked into the place, but it was gross with probable bed bugs, so they figured they'd just come straight to my apartment instead. She pushed past me into my tiny apartment without waiting for an invitation. Her boyfriend followed, looking around and commenting about how the place was smaller than he'd expected. Karen dismissed his complaint by calling it cozy and immediately asked where they should put their stuff. I watched in horror when she started moving my things around to make space for their belongings. She shoved my art supplies into a corner and moved my cat's food bowls without asking. When I tried to say we really needed to talk about this arrangement, she brushed me off by asking what there was to talk about since they were there now. Over the next hour, she made herself completely at home. She helped herself to food from my refrigerator, changed the temperature on my air conditioner, and complained that my Wi-Fi was too slow. When one of my cats hid under the bed, she laughed and said I needed to train them better. But the final straw came when she started going through my medicine cabinet. When I asked what she was doing, she explained she was looking for aspirin because she had a headache from all the travel stress I had caused her. That was it. Something inside me snapped. I told her she needed to leave. She seemed shocked and asked what I meant. I repeated myself, telling her to get her stuff and get out. She protested that they had just gotten there, but I stood my ground. I explained that I had never agreed to them showing up early, going through my personal belongings, and treating my home like a hotel. I made it clear that this arrangement wasn't working. She desperately pointed out they didn't have anywhere else to go, but I told her that wasn't my problem and reminded her she had months to plan this trip properly. Her boyfriend finally spoke up, suggesting maybe they should just go find a hotel. Karen snapped at him about what money they would use, reminding him that I was the one who had invited them there. I corrected her, explaining that I had invited them for a few days with advance notice and proper planning, not whatever this situation was. I started gathering their suitcases and moving them toward the door. Karen followed me, getting increasingly loud and aggressive. She started yelling about what a fake friend I was and how I couldn't just kick them out on the street. I told her to watch me do exactly that. By now my cats had both hidden, and I could hear neighbors' doors opening to see what the commotion was about. Karen seemed to realize she was making a scene and finally grabbed her boyfriend's arm. She declared angrily that she was fine with leaving, but I shouldn't expect her to ever speak to me again. I told her I was counting on it. The door closed behind them, and I immediately changed the locks. 20 minutes later, she was texting me nasty messages about how I'd ruined her vacation and demanding I pay for their hotel costs. I blocked her number. Later that evening, my boyfriend came home to find me stressed cleaning the apartment for the third time. He asked how it had gone, and I told him I had kicked them out. He congratulated me on standing up for myself and asked what had changed my mind. I explained that she had gone through our medicine cabinet. We ordered pizza and spent the rest of the evening giving extra attention to my traumatized cats. The next morning, I got a call from another high school friend who had heard Karen's version of events. She told me Karen had said I threw her out on the street for no reason. I asked if Karen had mentioned showing up uninvited, going through my personal belongings, and expecting free accommodation for almost 2 weeks. The friend admitted Karen had said I invited her and then changed my mind at the last second. I explained that Karen had been dodging my calls for weeks and refused to discuss any boundaries, and that I had tried to work with her. There was a long pause before my friend admitted that sounded more like the Karen she remembered from high school. Apparently, I wasn't the first person she'd pulled this kind of stunt with. The mutual friend told me about 3 other occasions where Karen had imposed on people's hospitality and then played the victim when things didn't go her way. A few days later, I saw posts on her social media about her amazing New York adventure at some fancy hotel. Funny how she found money for accommodations when she had to pay for them herself. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.